On your Tuesday episode of Locked On Blue Jays, the playoffs begin today. Toronto is in Minnesota. Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez will break down the key matchups to watch. We'll do our series predictions and talk all about the Toronto Blue Jays' decision to start Kevin Gausman and Jose Berrios in games 1 and 2. It's all coming up on today's show. Thanks for hanging.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Tuesday, October the 3rd, and it's the postseason. Can you smell the smells, Mike, of the postseason? What are the smells of the postseason? I guess it's just the same as the regular season, but more intense. It's great. We love it. I'm, of course, Sean Woodley.
Popcorn, more hot dogs, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah, more stress eating for sure. Yeah, why not more hot dogs? The voice you hear there is Mike DiStefano, the host of Locked On Leafs, and of course, a very afflicted Toronto Blue Jays fan here with me, Sean Woodley, host of Locked On Raptors, as we continue our little pop-up version of Locked On Blue Jays through the end of the postseason, and we hope it's not going to be a short stint for us on the podcast. In theory, our run on the show could be over as soon as tomorrow. We don't want that, though. We want to go and cover a fun baseball team going on a deep playoff run. It begins today in Minnesota, and we're going to tee it all up for you on the show. The key matchups to watch, the Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez matchup on the mound, the histories for the batters on each of these lineups against these pitchers, and then we have some best bets at the end of the show, and of course, predictions. Before that, just a reminder, you can find the show for free wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Make us your first listen each and every day, and we'll be coming at you, obviously, throughout the rest of the postseason. The timing and schedule of when the episodes will be will kind of vary based on the day, but we'll be here lots over the course of however long this postseason run decides to go. Mike, let's begin, shall we, with a little talk about the decision that came down yesterday. Lots of roster talk yesterday. As we record right now, we are still waiting for the official release of the Blue Jays postseason roster. If it comes through while we record, we will dissect it. But we know the broad strokes of what it's going to be. There was talk yesterday about there being 14 position players to 12 pitchers for this 3-game series. I don't hate that idea, honestly, considering the versatility you'd like to have in terms of pinch hitting options, etc. etc. But the big thing yesterday, Kevin Gausman, of course, gets game 1. We knew this. Game 2 goes to Jose Berrios, the former Minnesota Twin, who will have a chance, in theory, to push the Minnesota Twins' winless streak in the playoffs to 20 games if, in fact, the Blue Jays can win game 1. That's fun. That's a fun little subplot, the former Twin. What was your takeaway from the announcement that it'll be Gausman, then Berrios, then presumably Chris Bassett for a game 3 if necessary?
I was slightly surprised, thinking that maybe it would be Chris Bassett, just based on how well he's been able to pitch for this team, especially down the stretch. But honestly, Berrios has been quite dominant this year too, and I just wonder how much it has to do with the fact that they're going to Minnesota, right? Playing the Twins, the team that traded for him or traded him away to Toronto. How much did that play a factor into this? Like an emotional kind of factor into all of it. I mean, the guy's a great pitcher, though. Like, let's be honest. He really bounced back so strong for the Jays this year. The way that it lines up, I mean, he's been after Gausman, for a while now, so it makes some sense. They keep going in the rotation that the order is set in currently. Did it surprise you? Like, were you surprised to see that? Like, very surprised, or?
Maybe like a little. I don't think it's that shocking. This is the beauty of having a really deep rotation with lots of very viable options for a game 2, right? I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think, I feel probably better about Bassett of late.
Well, did they have to name a game 2 starter? Like, couldn't they have waited to see what happened today and then make the decision like, all right, tomorrow?
You know what?
Because if it's do or die, like, do you really want to go in a situation where we don't see Bassett at all?
You know what? I think we played this game last year with the playoffs a little bit too cute, right? Where it's like, oh, you get Manoah in game 1, Gausman will be there for game 2, and they obviously win again with the Manoah start. Like, you're going to close it all out in game 2. Like, for me, it's just, don't plan for game 2 or game 3. Plan for the game in front of you. And I think, obviously Gausman, it was the no-brainer choice in game 1. I think game 2, like Berrios, like these guys are basically the same, right? In terms of their overall impact this season. Berrios a 3.65 ERA, Bassett a 3.60, a little bit of a difference in the FIP. Berrios a better FIP than Chris Bassett just by a hair, 3.99 for Berrios to 4.28 for Bassett. Like they're basically just really good number two starters, both of them. The reason I think it's maybe a little surprising is because I do feel like the pitching staff and the pitching coaches and just the team in general value the sort of oscillations in style between pitcher. And so maybe you think Bassett was more of the sort of natural, change of pace after Gausman, but I don't really have a problem with it either way. I think also, like, if you do get to a game three, you feel all right with Chris Bassett being there as the guy to kind of close it out, right? And I think, there's really not a wrong answer here. I think it would have been too cute. I know there was the talk yesterday about Yusei Kikuchi. There's plenty of talk about how the Twins are just not very good against left-handed pitching. Just a 726 OPS this season against lefties. Just not very good. But I think it would have been too cute to have your fourth best starter go out there to start number two. So I don't think there was a wrong answer if they were good. As long as it's not Kikuchi, I think that they've made the right call, frankly.
Yeah, I don't think anyone ever expected Kikuchi to make a start here. Now, he will definitely be a part of this bullpen. Like, as we talked about at the top of the show, for whatever reason, the Jays don't have their roster out. It was supposed to be submitted at 10 a.m., I believe, the final 26-man roster. We expect Kikuchi to be on there. He's not going to be starting any games, but he definitely is going to be a big piece of what this team could do because he's pretty well the only guy. Like I don't have much faith in Trevor Richards. I know we've talked a lot about that so far on the few days that we've done this podcast.
Shai Davidi, by the way, predicting that Trevor Richards will be on the playoff roster.
Well, he
with
probably
Hyunjin Ryu
will
not
be.
making it. Yeah,
he probably will be. We spoke on that just because there seems to be some trust for whatever reason from John Schneider, but that's a whole can of worms that hopefully we don't have to get into, and that doesn't become a storyline over the next day or two. But Kikuchi, he's the only guy who you do trust to go in and get you multiple innings, right? Like, and this is what happens in baseball because there's a short leash on these guys. And specifically, I think probably with the Berrios start, like tonight, Gausman, he'll probably go in, get you 5-6 innings, and then you can turn it over to your, more dominant bullpen. But Berrios has been, and this is why it is interesting to go there. Some Minnesota Twins players, and they might know what's going on there, right? With Berrios.
Sure.
He wasn't there that long ago, 3 years ago. He was a member of that staff. But more importantly, I think that if things do start to unravel for him tomorrow, there is a contingency plan to quickly go to the pen and get Kikuchi going, right? Hard throwing lefty. That would be, I think a smart plan, a smart backup plan to have if one of these starters do kind of go awry early on. That's where Kikuchi's going to factor into this series. Not as a starter, but as a long inning relief guy.
Yeah, I think Kikuchi has tremendous value in this series. And it doesn't just have to be game two with Berrios. It's at any time if the Jays starter gets tagged. And look, we'll talk about Kevin Gausman and his history against the Twins coming up in the next segment. But if any of the starters get tagged, it's such a luxury to be able to bring Yusei Kikuchi into the game to try to at least tide over the team, right? Like, you don't want this happening, but it happens. Alek Manoah got dinged up last year in his start, and those games can get away from you really quickly, right? If you have a guy like Kikuchi who can come in, give you some length, and throw a lefty in against a lineup that you would figure is going to be stacked with lefties against the righty starter who's beginning the game, maybe you can actually kind of keep yourself in it, and you want to sort of maximize any opportunity to win a game. Yeah, maybe you're down 4-0 in the first inning because Kevin Gausman gets lit up, if we're talking worst case situations here. But if you can bring Kikuchi in and he can survive for 3, 4, 5 innings for you and really kind of make use of that bad lefty split for Minnesota, then I think you actually give yourself a chance to do some magic and come back in a game, as opposed to it getting out of hand and it being 7-8-0 before you really kind of get things back on the tracks. So I think Yusei Kikuchi is incredibly valuable in this series. Again, we'll keep an eye on whether the roster is going to drop. At this point, we know the big broad strokes. It's going to come down to the really good players doing really good things, and the sort of the way in which they assemble the back end of the roster is, obviously not unimportant. It's going to matter to have Cam Eden out there as a pinch running option, as we talked about yesterday. That's going to be big. But as far as the particulars of the exact 26, I feel like, for any series, if it's going to matter a little bit less, it's probably a 3-gamer, right? And so we'll see. But that's kind of the takeaway, I think, on the pitching setup for me. Totally fine with Gausman, Berrios, and that Kikuchi as a long man. I'm pretty bullish on his value in this series if he ever comes into need.
And it's so insane to be saying that. Like, imagine all of those words just came out of your mouth, like using the word valuable and confident in Kikuchi a year ago. Like, think back to where Jays fans were at with this guy a season ago. Everyone clamoring for him to be DFA'd, and they said, no, he's got good stuff. We got faith in him, and no one quite knew why there was faith in Kikuchi, and he turned out to turned in a pretty solid season with the beard. And I just think back to where we were a year ago with this guy, and it's hilarious just hearing the way that he's being talked about right now as a valuable member of this postseason roster. It's incredible the turnaround that he's really had this year.
We love the Yusei Kikuchi sans, or whatever the hell strained pun we want to use for the emergence of Yusei Kikuchi as a very valuable pitcher.
Kikuchi ain't poopy, I'll tell you that.
Good God. All right, we're going to break. Come back out to the side. We will get into the matchup. Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez, and the hitters who will line up to face the two aces for the Twins and the Blue Jays. How do they line up? What's the history? Who's got a track record of success against either Gausman or Lopez from these lineups? We'll do that all in just 1 second. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at Bird Dogs, who make the most comfortable shorts you're ever going to buy. Frankly, you got to get yourself some Bird Dogs. I have some Bird Dogs. I've given some of the pairs I've gotten to my dad, and they are his favorite shorts in the whole world. I have their hiking pants. They're also extremely comfortable, and they've revolutionized the game. Underwear, yeah, it's nice, whatever, it has its utility, but what if the underwear was just part of the pants? That's the deal with Bird Dogs. They have a comfort lining built in, so you don't have to have extra layers of stuff on. You can just wear those, and you are good to go for the day. And they have all sorts of uses. They have anti-sweat wicking fabric, so you can use them when you're at the gym playing golf. You can also take them out to the bar. You can take them out on a date. Whatever it might be, your Bird Dogs are fit for the occasion. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to check out for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That's the birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free water bottle at checkout. You don't want to take your Bird Dogs off. I sure don't. You won't either. We promise you. All right, let's continue on here. Your first listen of the day. Thanks so much for tuning in as we get you set up for Blue Jays Twins Game 1, 4:38 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Minnesota at Target Field. Can you feel the excitement, Mike? I'm thrilled. I'm really excited. I love playoff baseball. It makes me feel alive. Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez, two of the leaders in strikeouts in the major leagues this season, two of the best pitchers in the major leagues this season. The aces, I mean, I guess you could say Sonny Gray is an ace, even more so than Pablo Lopez, just on this year's numbers for the Twins. But either way, these two guys have been among the very best on two of the best pitching staffs in all of baseball this season. Kevin Gausman, Pablo Lopez, let's maybe start from the Gausman side of things. This has been a struggle point for him. The Minnesota Twins have not treated him very well over the course of his career. I believe I was reading Keegan Matheson, our buddy at MLB.com, a 6.35 career ERA for Kevin Gausman against the Twins this season in 2 starts, a 6.30 ERA. Not what you want. Like, he had 9 walks in just 10 total innings. Not very Gausman-like. He, only struck out 12 guys in those 10 innings. Also not very Gausman-like. You typically see him rack them up at a higher clip than that, especially against the Twins team that led the major leagues in strikeout rate at 26.6%. This feels like a matchup that Gausman should do pretty well in, but of course, it's just not gone that way so far this year. I don't know how much stock you put into a career of not pitching very well against the Twins. Obviously, different players, different iterations. Gausman's been around the way for a long time, but how are you feeling? Does this give you concern that Kevin Gausman has had some struggles, or is it all bygones be bygones and Kevin Gausman is just the clear dude to throw in Game 1 and you expect he's probably going to do Kevin Gausman things?
Well, I think two things can be true. I think he was very clearly going to be the game one starter for this team. He is the workhorse. He's earned that right to be this team's ace, and they lined it up perfectly so that he had not, an off day, so he didn't have to pitch on that Sunday. So he's ready to go for this game. So I think that is true, but you can't look at those numbers and feel 1,000% confident in
Sure.
Kevin Gausman against the Twins. But it's the postseason, man. Weird things happen all the time. He could go out there and spin an absolute gem. The thing with him, and I was listening to like the guys do their media day yesterday. Everyone is, on board with Gausman, and they say, he's such a calm, cool, collected guy. Like he's someone who truly has been able to, after a bad start, just kind of flush it, just like Jalen Hurts always says. You take a deuce, you flush it, you move on. And I feel like Kevin Gausman's been able to do that all season long. Even the one, the game against the Twins, like this was back in May and June, his 2 starts against the Twins. So it's been a while, and he's been pitching, great as of late. But you look at that last game that he did play, 4 2/3 innings, gave up 6 runs and 4 walks, 7 hits in that game. That clearly is not a Gausman-esque start. That's not what we've come to expect from Kevin Gausman. So, you'd hope that you get a little bit better pitching out of him. I think for me, the thing is more so going to be, can he get some run support, right? Like he's been a guy who's gotten just no run support at all this season. If the Blue Jays, when the Blue Jays get 3 or more runs in a Kevin Gausman start, he's 10-2 this year.
Yeah.
3 or more runs. That's the magic number the Blue Jays got to get to offensively. If they can get him 3 runs of support, they'll be fine. He'll be perfectly okay. So for me, I do feel confident that Kevin Gausman will go in there and kind of get it done. And then it's up to the offense at that point.
Yeah, like we've talked about, the bar to clear for this offense is not especially high, right? Like they have been just so good pitching and defense wise that really that 3-run marker is kind of the spot you got to hit. And you're going to be in a pretty good shot with a pretty good winning formula if you're this Jays team. James and T.O., a great Twitter account. If you do not follow James and T.O., if you're a Blue Jays fan and you don't, I don't really know what you're doing. If you're listening to this podcast and you're not following James and T.O., something's backwards. But either way, he shared a bit of a baseball reference filtering on teams and their records when they allow 3 or fewer runs this season. The Jays, 74-12, the best team in baseball in terms of total wins. 86 games, led the majors in total games in this situation as well. 74-12 in games in which they allow 3 or fewer runs. Like, this is a team that if you keep the runs low, you're probably going to win. You just got to get a little tiny bit of offensive contribution. Just quickly on the Gausman and the matchup against the Twins, some of the guys who kind of in their careers have given him some trouble. Max Kepler's the big one. Of course, probably the best overall hitter on this Twins team. 3 hits and 11 at-bats, a homer, a couple RBIs, a walk, 2 strikeouts, and 879 OPS for Max Kepler. Donovan Solano as well, Kevin Gausman's former teammate with the Giants, 828 OPS and 9 at-bats as well. Although after that, not a ton of success for guys who have faced Gausman in this Twins lineup. A few guys have not faced him, but Carlos Correa, 3 for 14 with a 639 OPS. Not very good. Christian Vasquez, 26 ABs, 5 hits, a 584. I mean, that's Christian Vasquez level stuff against everybody, but still, if you're worried about him being like the boogeyman in this series, not going to happen. We don't know the status of Byron Buxton. It seems like he's maybe trying to get himself back in. He's only 1 for 10 with a 200 OPS against Kevin Gausman. So while the track record against the Twins has not been awesome, the track record against specific players on this Twins team, non-Max Kepler and Donovan Solano division, is pretty good. And I would not imagine Solano's going to get even the start in this game, as Alex Kirilloff has kind of been their platoon guy from the left side against righties so far this season at first base. So we'll see. Pablo Lopez, Mike, go through the numbers here, he has not exactly fared very well against the Blue Jays either. This season, the one appearance, the Jays take on the Twins on May 27th, just goes 5 2/3, 5 hits, 4 earned runs, 3 walks, 6 Ks. Not the best performance from Pablo Lopez. And then the last time they faced him before that was way back in 2021 when he was with the Marlins. And in that game, 4 innings pitched, 5 hits, a couple earned, 9 strikeouts, but the Jays ended up getting to him and the Jays won that game. Where are you at with Pablo Lopez? Does he scare you? I feel like Sonny Gray maybe has a little bit more of a fear factor for me, just the way he's pitched this season. And it feels like Lopez is a guy the Jays might be able to figure out. We'll get to some of the individual stats against him in a sec, but where are you at with your level of confidence in the Lopez, figuring Lopez out from the Jays side of things?
Yeah, I think they'll have a chance to figure them out. I've had a lot of confidence in this lineup all season. They've let me down a lot, so who knows what we're going to see out of the Blue Jays lineup. But you mentioned the one start that he did have against Toronto this year. Gave up 4 runs in 5 2/3, allowed a couple of homers to both Bo Bichette and Kevin Biggio, and that was at Target Field. So that was at home. And I was looking at his home road splits, and I was kind of surprised to see that his home ERA is so high. It's kind of higher than you would expect. 4.21 ERA at home, and the thing with him too is his splits against the lefties is a little high with lefties. Definitely getting the better of him, hitting 271. So we're going to see a lot of balance in the lineup tonight. So you're going to see Brandon Belt, Kevin Biggio definitely going to be in there. Kevin Kiermaier probably going to get in there as well, just for the fact that they're going to want to try and balance out that lineup and try and get to Lopez and utilize what are his strengths, and then also identify the weaknesses and pitching to left-handed batters, certainly a weakness. So I think that they should be able to. I'm hoping that they can, because like we said, they got to muster up at least 3 runs. If they can get a couple off of Lopez, much like they did in the game they played earlier this season, I think they'll be in good shape to allow Gausman to do his thing and then allow that lights-out bullpen to come in. And, hey, the history repeats itself. Hopefully they can come out and have themselves a successful outing against this guy again.
Yeah, and I would imagine the lineup today will be pretty stacked with lefties. Kevin Biggio has a home run in 2 at-bats against Pablo Lopez. Bo Bichette also has a home run and a triple in 5 at-bats against him. Kevin Kiermaier has a home run against him, and he's 3 of 8 with an 1194 OPS against Pablo Lopez in their career. Obviously, coming to the AL recently, there's not a ton of track record here for most of these guys. Brandon Belt has the most ABs of any Blue Jay against Pablo Lopez. He's 3 of 12. He also has a home run. He's got an 891 OPS. That's encouraging. I'm guessing we'll see Dalton Varsho in this lineup today. Biggio, Kiermaier, Belt, and Varsho, I would assume, are all going to be in there for that lefty angle against Pablo Lopez. Whit Merrifield has a 900 OPS in 5 appearances. I can't imagine we're going to see Whit today, considering his struggles of late. But some encouraging results in very, very tiny samples. But 4 home runs among the current Toronto Blue Jays in a pretty limited sample size against Pablo Lopez. You got to like that as an indicator going into this one. I want to ask you a couple quick questions on the other side. We're going to get a quick best bet from each of us via FanDuel and our friends over there. We are going to make our predictions for the series. And also, Mike, I want to get you just sort of like an emotional answer from you. Which Twins player has you the most frightful? This is the playoffs. Random dudes. It's kind of like, which random dude's going to make us feel sad today is kind of the ordeal with the playoffs. We'll get into that question and more coming up in just a second. But first, we mentioned them. We got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, and right now is the best time to snap into action with the NFL season ongoing with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better place or time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You got to go check them out over at FanDuel. And right now, it's not just NFL. Obviously, the Major League Baseball playoffs start today. You want to get some player props going, pick some winners in these series. All of those lines are available for you over there on FanDuel. You can use your bonus money from your bets on the NFL over on those lines and bets as well. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and visit the site and get rolling to kick off the NFL season and, of course, the MLB playoffs. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, we continue on here, rounding out the show with our last look at Game 1 between the Blue Jays and Twins. We'll get to our best bets and our predictions in a second here, but I got to ask you, which Twins player has you the most scared going into this series? Which Twins player are we going to rue the appearance of? I think for me, like going back to last year, Cal Raleigh is still stuck in my brain forever from that stupid Mariners series. There was lots of things that went wrong in that series, but Cal Raleigh is certainly top of mind. Who comes to mind for you as a Mariners player who scares the bejesus out of you going into the playoffs, where one player doing something out of the normal can ruin your entire season?
Well, I don't know if it's out of the normal, but like I guess Max Kepler would be an answer
Sure.
there, like with the bat, right? He has a chance to play spoiler for the Blue Jays faithful. So I'm going to go with Max Kepler as my answer.
That's a good one. I'm going with God. There's lots of guys. There's a Canadian, Edouard Julien. Are we terrified of like the reverse karma of that? I'm actually most scared of Ryan Jeffers, the catcher who's been awesome in the second half of the season in particular. 2.7 WAR, second on the Twins in just 96 games played this season. He's been really, really good. A 138 WRC plus. Again, Cal Raleigh-esque in terms of just like catcher who can mash, and I'm a little scared of Ryan Jeffers in this one. Obviously, Christian Vasquez is the more defensive catcher of the two. Maybe they want to go defense over Jeffers. We'll see. I would imagine Jeffers has been so good at the plate, though, that they can't really sit him down. He's the guy I'm a little terrified of, and I think it's healthy to have a little bit of fear going into a playoff series. You don't want to go in feeling good. That's not the place to be. You got to have at least like some expectation for the worst case scenario in order to temper all your feelings. Let's get to some best bets, shall we?
Well, you want
Sorry,
a
what's
quick
up?
stat about your boy, Edward Julian?
Yes, please.
So I was just reading here. In the last month of the season, Julian so Aaron Judge led the majors with 26 walks. Julian, second most walks in the final month of the season, 25 walks. Ended with a 381 on base and a 130 OPS plus. So yeah, he's probably somebody to also keep an eye on. Dude gets on base, right? So yeah, certainly someone who could be worrisome for the
And we've
Twins.
seen the trouble that Gausman's had with the Twins with walks, and you wonder, like, have they figured out to just not swing at the splitter, right? Like, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah,
It's an impossible pitch to lay off of, it seems, but
was it the Twins that there was the concern that he was tipping pitches? Was that
I
against the
think
Twins?
that does ring a bell, yeah. So you would hope that that's been cleared up, and they maybe don't have that sort of inside track on his sort of process going into this. But yeah, it's certainly a concern out there, no doubt.
He issued 9 walks in 2 starts this year against the Twins. Not Gausman like, but hopefully that's eradicated. That was back in May and June, right? That's a long time ago. That's pre-summer.
Ages ago, yes.
Yeah.
Let's go to some best bets brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We each have one bet that we have is just like, maybe if you like, look, I am not very good at sports betting. I don't do it often. This is a you creation because you love this stuff, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just bad at it, so I don't really do it often. So take whatever I say is my best bet with a grain of salt. I will turn the floor to you, however, Mike. What is your best bet available over on our friends over at FanDuel on their gloriously easy to use website? What you got as your best bet?
So usually when I'm giving away best bets, I make sure that my best bet pays plus money. I don't like to make it easy and go with something that's like minus 180 that's likely to hit, but also you got to pay a little juice and you're not going to make a whole lot of money. I'm a risk taker, I suppose what we could say.
Calculated risk.
Calculated risk, of course. They always are, but calculated nonetheless. So I like one of my favorite bets to place over on FanDuel is the 2+ total bases bet, especially for this team who's got some pop. Both sides of the plate, realistically, have got some pop here. I believe that Brandon Belt is somebody who can come in and get himself either a couple of singles or collect himself a couple of bases somehow, whether it's a home run, a double, whatever it may be. But at plus 145 for Brandon Belt to collect 2 or more bases in the game tonight is a bet that I like. He has an OPS over 1,000 in the last month. Lopez, we know that he's seen Pablo Lopez more than anyone else in this Blue Jays lineup. And, the more that a pitcher or the more that a batter sees a pitcher, the more that information they pick up on a guy. Could that be helpful for him going into this series? Probably. You look at his career OPS in 12 at bats against Lopez, an 891. So he's also, hitting for power against this guy regardless. And with Lopez not being, as solid against lefties, I think there's a chance for Brandon Belt, who's been one of the more fearful Blue Jays hitters over the course of the last month. For him to get 2+ bases here in a playoff game, I think is a possibility. And to get that at plus money at plus 150, it's a play I like.
Well, maybe we should just rename this segment Best Belts, because I also had a Brandon Belt bet as my best bet. Look at that! And it makes me feel better because you know what you're talking about, and I barely do. So I am going a little further up in the juice here, Mike. I'm going Brandon Belt to hit a home run at plus 430. That's my best bet. You get some good plus money there. And look, 3 home runs since he got back from the IL this past week. He seems to be in a great spot right now. The back spasms seem to be behind him. Fingers crossed that can come back anytime for a 35-year-old man. But I'm feeling good about Brandon Belt. And I wonder, will he bat second? We'll probably know this by the time you're listening to this. But does he get back in that 2-hole where they had him in the last week of the season? Either way, I like Brandon Belt. He has the home run against Pablo Lopez in the past, as we talked about. We mentioned the good track record of success over 12 ABs. I will go Brandon Belt with a home run at plus 430 is my best bet. And don't take my advice at all if you're a person who likes your money. Let's go now to our predictions for the series. We'll do a prediction for the result in a number of games, and then a series MVP. Mike, what you got?
I think the Blue Jays actually get it done. It's not just, me being a fanboy here. I think they have a strong chance to win this series. I think that the pitching, they are pretty even with pitching. I think if this Blue Jays lineup is coming around in the way we saw in the final week of the season, I think they're a better hitting team. If they can just keep the ball in the ballpark, that's been the only thing that really has kept Minnesota that offense scoring runs is when they go yard. So if they can keep the ball in the ballpark, I think that they got a good chance to come away with the victory. I'll say it's a series. It'll go 3 games, but I think the Jays will win this one in 3 games. Series MVP, Bo Bichette. Let's give it to Bo Bichette, because it's Bo. Bo knows baseball. Bo's been amazing. He's been great on defense at short. I think he makes a couple of big plays too that'll have you talking. That'll be replayed on SportsCenter and ESPN. And I think Bo Bichette will get it going with the bat as well. So we'll give Bo series MVP.
I like it a lot. I am going to also predict the Blue Jays to win this series. And I'm struggling with 2 or 3 games. 3 games is like the logical on the fence cop-out, not a homer pick, right? It's like, it's going to be close. It'll be tight. And that's probably where it will end up. And I feel good about the Jays throwing Chris Bassett against whatever, Bailey Ober in Game 3. I feel good about that. But I also kind of believe in the power of Minnesota really sucking at playing in the playoffs in all sports. And it's been 18 straight games lost in the playoffs for Minnesota. You think Toronto Blue Jays fans have bad emotional baggage from the postseason? Twins got you beat. Don't worry. And I feel like you lose Game 1. It's going to be some really bad juju, and I think the Blue Jays will win Game 1. I like the matchup of Gausman against this Twins lineup more than I like it for Minnesota with Lopez going against this Jays lineup. And so I'm going to say they win it in 2. I think just the power of being a Minnesota sports team. And I spoke last night, our friend Seth Topal, who hosts the Locked On Wild podcast on the NHL channel at Locked On, he's a big Twins fan, and I was talking to him last night, and he was just like, no, the Twins are losing both of these games. And so when the fans in Minnesota are so despondent before it even begins, I have to go with that. I'm going Jays in 2, and then, we'll reassess, and, up against the Astros in the next round, things get a lot more dicey. But and this isn't to say that I think the Twins are a pushover team. I think they're very good. I think they're kind of being slept on. They were really good offensively down the stretch. OPS of 825 in September. Just hitting way better than the Blue Jays are right now. But I believe in the power of pitching and defense, baby. And so I'm going Jays in 2. And I surely won't be left feeling very disappointed when it does not go that way at all. Mike, Oh, my series MVP. I'm going to stay on the Belt train. I think Brandon Belt's going to have a huge series. I think,
Nice.
just like being a lefty against a couple big righty starters, he's been red hot. I'm going Brandon Belt. He's been their best hitter all season long. 850 OPS, leads the team among regulars. That is nothing to sneeze at. I'm going Brandon Belt as my series MVP. With that, we will leave it there. Mike, Godspeed, my friend. Enjoy game one. Everybody out there, enjoy game one. Should be a blast. We will come back, if the very least, if not later tonight, we will come back to you early tomorrow morning with a recap of game one and look ahead to game number 2, Jose Berrios and Sonny Gray. But with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate, review wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. Follow Mike at Mickey_Canuck on Twitter. I'm at Woodley Sean. We will talk to you again after game one. Have a good one, everybody, and enjoy.